So this is my reflective progress journal, entry 2. Throughout this reflection, I'm going to be using Brookfield 1995's reflection model to structure it. I'm going to be talking about something that interests me and something that I observed within the lesson that I thought that can go into great depth and something that I wish to take forward into my teaching. So I'm looking on behaviour management and respect. I've used these two terms as a kind of a collective aspect within teaching, and as I feel like behaviour management is important to gain respect from your pupils, but not in an aggressive way, but in a more passive way. As a young learner in school, I feel like I respected more the strict teachers, due to the fact that I wouldn't misbehave, or I wouldn't mess around within the lessons. But then I think to myself that I feel like maybe I was just being oppressed by the teacher. And however, within my lessons, I felt like I didn't respect the teacher because he allowed us to do whatever we wanted to, which is quite strange. So it's kind of finding that balance. I'm going to be talking about finding the balance within the conclusion at the end. One thing I like about this respect definition I found is admiring someone who has the abilities, qualities, and achievement, and that's really something I'm also going to be talking about. Having the ability is very respectful, as a lot of people respect, captains of football teams such as Steven Gerrard, who has those achievements under his belt. And yeah, moving forward as a teacher, somebody who's been to in a school for a long time, or has a lot of different ways of managing behaviour, might be respected more than others. I also got the assumptions from 3 other PE teachers within the department, and something that comes across here is positive relationships and building rapport with young learners. And this is definitely something I wish to take into my teaching as a teacher trainee. Also, there's a lot of discipline and having clear boundaries and a high level of behaviour. So that's kind of not the opposite, but kind of making sure you have control maybe before you start building those relationships. But that's not that's not my assumptions. That's the assumptions of some others, but something really interesting to look at. So my autobiography of the observation of the lesson I observed. So this was a GCSE Year 10 theory. Really good teacher, going to start off by saying. He didn't ask for silence as they walked through the door. He allowed them to speak amongst themselves, and he started talking about their social lives. Did they have a good weekend? Little things like that. But as soon as the lesson got started, he had his homework sheet out, no homework sheet. And he went round to each people and said, "I'm going to trust you here. Have you done your homework or not? Yes or no?" Went round the class. A couple said yes. He said, "Don't worry, show me your books next lesson." But one pupil said, "I do have it, but I didn't print it off." And he goes, "Well, I'm going to put that down as no homework. You must print it off, even though I'm not asking to see the books. You must print it off and stick it in your book. Otherwise, I'm going to have to print it off for you." So that's a good way of setting your own expectations, high expectations, and having clear boundaries within the lessons, I guess. One thing I've highlighted here was no shouting, which I really liked within the class, and they had a lot of humour within the lesson, very age relevant as well, which suited the learners within the class. He relates a lot of work to the pupils' lives. For example, Johnny, you play handball, so what is the short in handball abduction or adduction, and just relating them to the interests of the pupils within the class. He has a really interesting use of questioning to make people feel comfortable. So if they're in pairs, he allows them, when he goes around to ask them the answer for the question, he says, would you like to answer, or do you want to phone a friend? And that allows them to pass it on to somebody else. And it keeps going round until somebody answers the question, really. But another thing he does is, what does your partner say? So this is really, I guess, looking at, if you can't answer the question, what did your partner say? So they give them the opportunity to discuss their own thoughts or their partner's thoughts, especially in little pair work. There's a lot of mutual respect and trust within the lesson, talking about the homework task earlier, but in more detail, he goes around and speaks to them about the work, and it ensures that everyone's on the right line, and allows them to have their own conversations even when he's talking. However, he can demand silence immediately without really raising his voice. So you can see that he has the authority, but he doesn't use it to his event as to his in a disadvantaged manner, I guess, in a negative way. At the end of the lesson, he stood by the door and just excused the class and asking them what their plans are, or telling them just to have a good day. So really good respectful lesson. And before I move on to the lesson reflections from teachers and pupils, I just want to say that this is a bit of a role model for me at the moment within this my foundation school. So it's something I'm looking to spend somebody I'm looking to spend a lot more time with. So moving on, the views of others. So first of all, I'm going to start with colleagues, but with students, Brookfield talks about this as the most important part of your teaching, getting reflection from your students, as you can then teach more responsibly according to their needs. So definitely something I will look to be doing as a teacher. Firstly, with colleagues, also Brookfield talks about this as a way of picking out hidden habits, both positive and negative. And before we go into detail, this is something that this individual wants me to do, is observe every lesson and give him the feedback on each lesson, so I can pick out his hidden habits, both again positive and negative. So the teacher's reflection talked about having clear boundaries, and this was obvious throughout. When there was a little incident that went a bit too far, he would shut that down before it resulted in any negative behaviour. He had a lot of humour, as I said, age and class relevant and relatable, and he also talks about how to know your kids is very important. And Zhang 2007 talks about this and about knowing your kids. And if a young learner feels like your teacher knows you and respects you and you will feel valued within the class, then that's going to create a positive environment for all other learners also, and for yourself as an educator. Finally, having clear... ask as many questions to as many pupils as you can to keep everyone on task. And this moves back to everyone's listening because they know that the question might come to them, but they all also know that the phone a friend might be an option, so there's no stress at the same time. With the pupil reflections, they talked about how the demonstrations are relatable, which I've discussed, and the fact that he never shouts and he's never too strict, but always has the class under control, and the fact that he has real conversations with learners, not just how was your weekend? Okay, great. He goes into a little bit detail sometimes to an acceptable and appropriate level, and I think the learners just see him not as a friend but as somebody they could go to if they had any problems. On the left here, I've got a little phrase that says, "Everyone who remembers his own education, remember the teachers, not the methods and techniques." So as you've been in the heart of educational system, you must make a difference to their lives, not the methods and techniques you produce, but just your personality and how you can be there for them if there are any needs. So applying this to this theory to practice, I'm going to talk a lot about finding the middle ground as an educator. Start 2011 talks about how the environment that learners feel safe and valued and respectable is the most positive type of environment, and Capel et al. Kind of supports that, 2009. And they talk about how positive behaviour strategies and teaching strategies come together to stimulate the gaining of respect. And really, as I said before, within my PE lessons, we're allowed to do whatever we want. And I'm not saying I didn't respect that teacher, but maybe you do respect the teachers that allow you the freedom and not just a kind of military style PE, or in a classroom setting, for example, just copy off the whiteboard. So that kind of reflects upon that. However, Capel and Whitehead 2010 does talk about that. If you are over welcoming and start to see the learners as friends, this can be a negative procedure, and you might be in this risk of losing respect, really. So it's definitely about finding that balance. I want to finish on just talking about how as an educator myself, building relationships is something that's really important to me. Something I did my dissertation on also, and I'm starting to find how to build relationships doesn't have to be after you've got full control. Never start to smile till Christmas, that type of thing. I'm starting to build relationships. I think I had said this, but I had a class the other day, and this teacher started asking me, "Oh, so when are you going to start teaching us?" Because I'm preferred over them, over the other teacher, but I'm not going to get to a stage where I'm becoming a friend or I'm getting walked over. So making sure my practice is also comes with high expectations from the full class. Thank you.